Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. My name is Gavin Schall. Today, I'm joined by Coach Gibson Pyper to break down the Miami Heat zone, how the Knicks attacked it in Game 2, how they can do better, and what adjustments to expect from both teams heading into Game 3 right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because we are now available on all platforms. That includes wherever you currently get your podcasts and on YouTube. So remember to check us out on YouTube, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you never miss an episode. My name is Gavin Schall. I'm your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and about to be joined by Gibson Pyper. If you remember, we had him on earlier in the year to break down the Knicks defense and what was going right after adding Deuce McBride and Quentin Grimes into the rotation. Now we're going to flip sides. We're going to break down the Miami Heat zone, talk about how the Knicks attacked it, and talk about how they can continue to do better heading into Game 3 right now on Locked On Knicks. All right, as promised, guys, we were joined by the mind behind Half Court Hoops, Gibson Pyper. You can follow him on Twitter at Half Court Hoops. He does NBA and NCAA X's and O's breakdowns. And you can find links to his Substack, where he also does written breakdowns, and his YouTube, where he does video breakdowns, which is where we first had you on last time, Gibson, to talk about the Knicks half-court defense. It went bad for a little while. Then it got really good in the first round against the Cavs, and a little iffy against the Heat so far, but we're back. How's it going, man? How you enjoying Knicks Heat as a series so far?
Yeah, it's been a little bit heartbreaking for me because I'm a Cavs fan. It was cool to see like the Knicks, kind of be back in the spotlight and having success in the playoffs, and seeing like the crowd at the home games and stuff has been really, really exciting. And just kind of see these play like Brunson's impact in the playoffs has been really cool. And so that's been exciting, but I've been loving it.
Nice. I'm glad we didn't have you on last round. It would have been more acrimonious. But now we've gotten any rooting interests off the table. I guess I wanted to start with Game 2. What adjustments did you see from the Knicks? I mean, outside of a guy named Jimmy Butler not playing, that allowed them to ultimately win the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard because like Butler's not playing. Randall's coming back, and so it was like a little bit of a weirdness overall with everybody. We saw in Game 1 with Embiid out, it just throws a wrinkle into game plans. You don't really know what to expect. Jimmy Butler out, you kind of know more what to expect with the Heat. It's going to be more finding shooters and centered around Bam and more like 5 out with their offense. And then they played a heavy zone defense game in Game 2, which, I'm sure we'll talk about more in depth. But the main adjustment is just kind of, feel out the first half of the attention they're giving to Randall, bringing him back, and then how they're playing Brunson without Jimmy Butler, since he was their primary defender with Martin on him in Game 1. And then kind of just figuring out as the game goes how to get to your spots against the zone. Wasn't really too many adjustments, as more it was just like in-game flow. How do the players react to these situations with the staff and like after timeout situations?
Guys, so let's start off with that zone, because that fascinated me. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I found the perfect guy to break this down. What did the Heat try to do with their zone defense? Let's start there.
Yeah, so their zone defense is a little more unconventional than like a typical 2-3, where you'd see in like a college setting, where the two players are normally like at the elbows or a little bit above at the 3-point line, more flat. And then the bottom 3 players a little bit lower, unless you're Syracuse, where they play their wings a little bit more extended. But the Heat, essentially, the top 2 players are responsible. The first player basically takes the ball. Second player is almost at like the nail free throw line area in the middle. And then he takes the first pass after that if there's a pass across. And then their wings are a little bit like one step up. So you'd see instead of it being 3 flat on the baseline, the 2 wings basically take 1 step up or 2 steps up a little bit higher. And then they keep Bam or the center in the middle of the floor to protect the rim and rebound and things like that. Now, what they do is if they adjust really, really well to what you do. So it's not like a 2-3 zone. Here's your responsibility. You have to do that every time. It's consistently reacting to what the offense is trying to do with either sets or actions against it. And they did, like, I was writing in my notes, they did things that like nobody else does. Like I've never seen the top of the zone do what the Miami Heat was doing. So basically how the Knicks were attacking the zone primarily, and this was true for most of the regular season. They have one special set that they go against it where they basically try to overload one side of the floor, put a player on the wing, player in the corner, and then flash a player opposite and have like almost 4 guys attacking 2 on one side. That's like the goal. And that's like a classic overload set where you try to basically just outnumber the zone right on one side. And so in the playoffs, what the Knicks have been doing a lot more of, because they can't run that set every time, they've been trying to essentially ball screen the top of the zone, right? So in game 1, the Heat only played 7 zone possessions. In game 2, they played 62 possessions. Wow. So like they ramped that thing up like crazy, especially with Butler being out. It's the best way to, hide the matchups like against a guy like Brunson or Randall, right? Who can kind of one-on-one create their own shot and basically ruin your defensive plan by themselves. So what was happening was they would try to screen. Basically what you do is you try to screen the inside of the top player on the ball. And then when Brunson comes off to his left, the next guy has to take him. Then you're playing 2-on-1 on the other side, right? So player in the wing, player in the corner. Brunson comes right off. He just gets it out early, and then you can have 2 shooters spaced or a quick attack off the slot. Basically, just create an advantage like that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, yeah, that makes the most sense. Like that seems the best way to attack it. Well, then what the Heat decided to do was to have the player who got screened go under the screen and then switch the other player up top onto the ball and have the player who was originally on the ball just flip-flop, right? And it was just like nobody ever does it. Like it's so confusing because nobody ever does it. I've never really seen anybody do that before. So that was and Brunson had some success turning the corner quickly and attacking before the guy was in the position and everything like that. And in one-on-one, if he gets like a Gabe Vincent matchup, if they switch it like that. But still, it was just it was very like a confusing thing in the moment where you just don't expect that to happen. You expect maybe play quickly, and then it's like, wait a second, they just switched, and then you got to figure out what to do next. So,
yeah. To me, like it, and let me know if you disagree with this, because I'm curious, like, and we can talk about this before we finish, like how they'll switch things up when Jimmy Butler's back. But it felt like their answer for Julius Randle's back, which means we can't put Bam on the Knicks center. And then if you're running a 1-5 pick and roll, Bam's no longer involved in that action. And instead you're getting, ideally if you're the Knicks, you're getting Kevin Love on an island against Jalen Brunson. And this was the Heat saying like, all right, we're not playing a full game like that. Like even if we put a more athletic guy at the 4, we still don't really want to play a full game like that. So let's switch this up. Let's find another way to go about it. And then it kind of came down to your points, like how quickly Brunson could make a decision. Like the shot that gave the Knicks, like what was ultimately their final lead of the game, was 96-96. Like it was just Hartenstein coming up, setting his screen. Brunson went around and got the 3 off before anyone from Miami could get there. And if you're Miami, like you're kind of taking that bet on Brunson making contested 3, because before that game, he was at 30, or he was like 30% for the whole playoffs. He was 34% for the whole playoffs and just wasn't shooting well at all. I also liked RJ Barrett as a guy, like especially in the first quarter, like twice he got buckets, just like very quickly attacking gaps in it. But how do you think the Knicks can continue to like evolve and like find even better ways to go at it and like punish the Heat if they're going to do that now that they have a game of film of like exactly how they're operating it?
Yeah, and they did adjust as the game went along. Hartenstein did a really good thing where since he knew they were switching at the top, he actually just screened the backside of Gabe Vincent one time and to just let, I think it was Brunson just go. Or no, it was Quickley. Mm-hmm. He basically just let Quickley, because the Heat defender was expecting the screen, he kind of opened up and then Quickley just went and Hartenstein screened the back of Vincent. And so it was just like a free lane. So I was like, that was pretty cool. Like that was a good adjustment, kind of like a fun ball screening angle in the moment. And so what they'll try to do is basically just change the angle of the ball screen to make it a little bit easier. So if they're expecting the ball screen to go to the left, they just flip it to the right real quick. I would probably expect to see more like double ball screen action. I did a breakdown in the middle of the season about the Cavs versus the Heat zone, about how the Cavs were double ball screening it really well. And then the Heat made an in-game adjustment as well and tweaked it. So it's kind of like a little mini chess match in one quarter. So that can work where if you set like a double ball screen and have the second player roll into like the high post, so like a flash action. But the hardest part about the Heat zone and going against it in particular is, number one, their staff and Spoelstra also are so freaking smart. Like they just like usually have a counter or a tweak for everything you try and do. Like in the, I think later in the fourth quarter, the Knicks went to more empty ball screen action where they try to screen one side and then play basically 3-on-2 on the other side. Kind of like we talked about, creating that numbers game on that one side. And the Heat were like, cool, we're just going to ice it, which meant they would just basically have one player above, not letting Brunson even use the ball screen. And then the player on the wing, who's already in position, just stand there so he couldn't really go anywhere. Yeah. And it kind of just like stagnated it on one side of the floor. And then you get to the second side and you can kind of play, but it essentially makes the other players have to make some more plays. So what I think we'll see more of is putting Josh Hart and RJ on the wings, or even like IQ on the wing, and have them be the guys who just catch it and quickly get downhill and then try to make a decision from there. They had some success with that, where you make a quick swing pass, and even Randall at times, but he's not the preferred decision maker or the preferred driver I would have. I like him more like the high post elbows, attacking those matchups and those scenarios, drawing to, making the easy pass. But having like a player like Quickley who can catch it and just get downhill real quick, or Hart, who's a good downhill driver, I think those are two easier tweaks where you can just make a quick pass when the attention's on Brunson and try to get them going downhill. But there's no real good answer. It's just more of like, make shots. Like you make a 3 or 2, they're going to get out of it, and then try to, as best as you can, find the advantage for you. Maybe if Duncan Robinson's on one wing, put Randall in the corner, have him back him down, or Brunson attack that wing or something simple like that. But that's the point of the zone, is even if you do that, there's usually a second guy around or available to help. So it's more about making those plays. When they did get multiple driving kicks, it looked really well. I like Brunson had got a couple like relocate open threes that were really good. Like one in the corner he hit was a big 3. And so just getting more probing driving kick actions, which is again kind of what the Heat want you to do. Like they want you not to run a Brunson Randall ball screen, or like put Brunson in ISO or ball screen action. So they're kind of trying to get you out of your normal offense. But at the end of the day, if the Knicks offense, which I think it is patient enough, they'll get the open looks that they need to.
All right, guys, when we come back with Gibson, I want to get into some personnel shifts the Knicks can do to continue to take advantage of Miami's defense. But first, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right pieces are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Yeah, I'm with you. And I even wonder if like Hartenstein's a guy like on the short roll who can make plays, and like he wasn't put in that position a ton all year, and like you don't really want him dribbling a ton, but he's a really good passer, and like he didn't get credited with it, but had a couple of nice dishes that like with better shot making could have turned into baskets in this game. I also wonder, like, I mean, I know that this is something you just noted, but like if they try to get Randall the ball, like in those situations, like on the elbow, not even necessarily to use him as like a decision maker, because he had that one play, like this was the start of the sequence where Hartenstein got eventually like the 3 offensive rebounds in a row. And it was like Randall with Kyle Lowry on him. You saw Randall like was way slower than you'd like, because he caught it with 8 seconds left on the shot clock, took about 4 seconds off, and then kind of like clicked for him like, oh, this is Kyle Lowry on me, and then just bullied him under the rim. And I wonder if you could tell Randall to just like kind of catch the ball and put his head down, because like I thought on the whole this game, like even if the decisions weren't quick, like he played pretty unselfishly and sprayed the ball around, and like particularly late in the game, but also early in the game, like he was able to draw like 2-3 defenders, and like even if they came towards the end of the shot clock, get guys good shots. And I guess the next thing I'm really curious about is like what you think would be best for the Knicks from a personnel perspective, because I think there's a balance to be had there, right? Because I mean, you mentioned RJ and Hart, and I think my concern is like with Jimmy coming back, like Tibbs is going to do what he did game 1 and try to match Hart's minutes to Butler. But I thought it was crucial to have Quentin Grimes out there to provide a little bit more spacing. Obviously, he didn't shoot well. It was 1 for 3 from 3. He didn't hit a 2, but he's another guy. Like you look at the regular season, like Fred Katz had this stat that he led the NBA in blow by rate. Like he's very good attacking closeouts. Obviously, also the Knicks' best shooter. Dropped 23 points on the Heat with 5 threes the last game of the regular season. So there's proof of concept there. And I guess I'm just curious, like what do you think is the balance that Tom Thibodeau should go to in that wing rotation? Because I think at a certain point, like the Heat are just going to dare Hart and Butler to make threes, or not Harden Butler, Harden Barrett to make threes. And I almost thought like they might have been too aggressive closing out on those guys and like giving them drives. And I wonder if Spoelstra adjusts to that and says like, all right, at a certain point, like obviously RJ did it last game. Like, let's see if those two can keep doing it.
Yeah, that's the interesting part is the Heat are basically going to test those guys, right? Can you make an open three? Can you drive and make a good decision? Because their whole defensive philosophy, and I'm sure everybody can see it, is basically like, you drive, we're just going to be there to help. Like, they're not going to try to give up a lot of open looks to the rim or anything in the paint. And it doesn't mean they don't, but that's like you watch a drive and there's usually like 2 to 3 Miami Heat guys ready to be there to help the helper and then rotate from there. The interesting part is I think Grimes provides the mental spacing more than actual spacing right now, right? So like what I mean by mental spacing is when you are like in a game and you're a player and you're helping on a drive and then you have to close out to the corner, if you see a guy like Grimes, you're going to close out more, have more attention on the closeout than you would maybe Hart, right? And you saw them, then they left Hart open twice in the fourth quarter last game 2, and he made one, missed one. And then they did get offensive rebounds, but that was like the idea was, like we're okay, we're fine with him beating us, but not, Brunson or Randall, basically. Yep. And so I don't know if it's necessarily like a definite answer where it's like these players should be playing, all together and this should be your closing lineup, because I think there is a little bit more than just like Grimes is more of a threat than Quickley, or like Hart is more of a threat than Grimes in this game. Yeah, I think, and so I think it's more of like you get a feel for how they're playing, right? I think Hart probably has to. I mean, I trust Grimes on Butler. I don't think he would do any worse than Hart, in my opinion. Like, no. Just from a defensive standpoint, I think they're about even in terms of skill level. And I mean, Butler kind of gets what he wants to get anyways, right? Like you can't put Randall on him because he's going to, draw fouls and blow by him pretty quickly. And you can't really put, any other players on him because he's just going to bully them. So it's like Hart and Grimes are the main, in my opinion, the main two that should be considered for guarding Butler. And then you just kind of help from there. So I think it's situational. I think it's a coaching feel in the moment where you kind of figure out who your best 5 are, which is it's a downside, but also a luxury too. Like where you can have a 5th or 6th option, and even throw a Hartenstein in there for, Robinson or Randall, depending on the situation. You could have some flexibility and of who's closing or who should be on the court together. But I think, in my opinion, I would have Grimes and Hart out there together often, and then just figure out Brunson, Randall, and Robinson, or whoever else is the other 3.
Yeah, I'm with you, and they closed that way, and it was interesting, right? Because RJ was in the midst of such a good game, and I didn't have any problem with it, just because of like the collective defensive awareness of those guys. You saw Grimes had that great play at the end of the shot clock where like he sprinted over from the corner to knock that pass away from Bam, and I'm just saying, like, as good as RJ's been in the playoffs and as improved as he's been defensively, like he's not making that play that Grimes just made. And I'd like to see them get to like IQ, Grimes, and Brunson together, because that was a lineup like in the regular season. I think it was like plus 10 per 100 possessions, really good group. And against the zone in particular, like the combination of, the shooting for Quickley, I guess kind of what you just said for Grimes. Maybe it's only mental spacing right now. Like his shooting is very theoretical in the playoffs, but like the threat those two provide as shooters, like, and quick decision makers. And I think the benefits that Quickley could have from attacking a scrambling defense versus like the majority of his minutes now, coming against opposing bench units, with him being the primary ball handler. And I guess that's what I wanted to get your thoughts on next. Like, what do you think the Knicks can do to get him going? I don't know if get Grimes going is the right term, because like I think this might just be who he is, like in his first ever playoffs. And similar with Obi Toppin, who's been playing really well, but as a backup just seems to lose his confidence a little bit. So I guess the bench unit as a whole, but really Quickley is kind of the main guy in that conversation for him, because I think at some point he's going to have to be close to the player he was in the regular season for the Knicks to win this series and have a chance in the next round if they do. All right, guys, we're going to be back with Gibson one final time to discuss adjustments the Miami Heat might make heading into Game 3, and finally get Gibson's prediction on the rest of the series. But first, I wanted to remind you that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I know on my end, I've benefited a lot from therapy. it is just helpful to show you how you're thinking, and sometimes how your thought processes can be a little self-destructive, and maybe to question them a little bit more, and just kind of help you along through life. So find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Yeah, I think, this sounds weird, but like getting stops and getting out in transition or early offense is probably more important for those three in particular, right? Especially if they're on the court together.
Yeah.
Because, you get a transition layup, you see the ball go through the net, you feel better, right? So like if all you're doing on offense, like Grimes, who primarily is catch and shoot or attack a closeout, like it's hard to keep your rhythm, especially if you're not used to it, right? Like if you're not used to a playoff rhythm, because you just don't touch the ball often if it's in Brunson or Randall's hands so much. So seeing the ball go through the net in transition really helps. Getting Quickley out and Obi out in transition, where they don't really have to make a quicker decision. They can just play it fast and play without thinking, really helps. But that's obviously easier said than done. In the half court, I really liked some of they went to a couple empty ball screens with Obi picking and popping. I think he attacked a closeout on Kevin Love one time and had a good pick and pop three one time. I like that action because it's hard to guard for the ball handler, but also allows a simpler attack for Obi to be able to get downhill and make like a quick read instead of like a catch and shoot or a catch in the elbow and kind of look around it and decide what to do. It's just kind of him playing. I think that's his strong suit, is just getting it and going, or catching and shooting a three off a ball screen. He shouldn't take as many threes as he shot in game one, but that's a whole different thing that I would talk about. But yeah, I think those are simple things that you can do to encourage them to just kind of play, right? Like where you're not. The Heat make you think. And so the ways to beat that is to not think or find ways to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And play with more flow. Yeah. And I think to that point, I'm kind of the opinion that this is a series for Isaiah Hartenstein more than Mitchell Robinson, which feels weird because, again, there's a case to be made that Mitch was the MVP of their round one series over the Cavs. And I think the single biggest factor there is that, to me, Mitch doesn't look 100% physically. Like the way the speed with which he was able to guard one guy in the pick and roll and then close on the roller in the first round, just isn't there. Like he was beat to the rim by Strus. He was beat to the rim by Lowry in game two. And then you watch Hartenstein, and I took a bunch of notes on it just on a rewatch, and the way he was blowing things up defensively, showing in the pick and roll and then recovering to Kevin Love, guarding two, in drop, the offensive rebounding, to your point, his intuitiveness on screens, and as a passer, against a team that forces you to make quick decisions. And considering that Miami is more than happy to hack Mitchell Robinson rather than watch him dunk the ball over and over again, I kind of think he's the better option. But what's your opinion on that? And then what do you think the balance is there for Tom Thibodeau in playing those two guys, given how good Robinson was in round one?
Yeah, I think Hartenstein's a good option against a guy like Kevin Love, where if you're talking about him going out and guarding a ball screen, then recovering back to a 3-point shooter. I think that's a very good move and something that they should stick with. But I still think Robinson is the better player and the better overall rim protector, and probably, offense is tough because they don't really use Hartenstein's skill set like he can get to, with playmaking, where he can make.
They got passes. A lot better at it the second half of the year, but it wasn't what he was on the Clippers.
Yeah, sure. It improved, but I still don't think they're going to do that in the playoffs, I guess is the right way to phrase that, where that's not their go-to offense for the second unit or even the primary unit. So I think Robinson still has more value in terms of what the Knicks ceiling is. I think you need him to be the level he played in the first series, frankly. And I think he can take the Knicks further than Hartenstein centered would. Just my personal opinion, and just something that I think going forward should be the focus. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have the option to where if a game calls for it and you need to close with Hartenstein, I think that level of comfortability is nice, right? It's nice to have the look of like, okay, maybe we use him in this scenario, or maybe we go to Robinson versus, Bam's going off, Robinson's playing well, keep him, in the game or something like that. So I still think that the ceiling is Robinson. I think he provides a higher level than Hartenstein can, but it's really cool to see Hartenstein do all of like the little things really well, right? Like not having any one particular thing that stands out sometimes is a negative, but also like he doesn't do anything bad. So it's a positive because you're like, okay, well, we know what to expect from him, right? Whereas we talk about like a ceiling where it's like, yeah, but what if Robinson doesn't play that level, So,
yeah. And I still think I get the case for me for Mitch is that like he didn't get to play a ton of minutes in game 2. I'd like to see a full game of him like getting to attack Kevin Love on the glass with Bam not being on him and see if that can really change things for the Knicks. Because we saw like Hartenstein dominate in that respect in the fourth quarter. And you got to imagine Mitch has a chance to be even more effective there. How about we wrap up on this? I kind of want to get the op perspective here. What do you think Miami's coaching staff is thinking after game 2? Like, are they licking their chops to some extent and saying like, hey, we probably should have won that game without Jimmy Butler. We beat him pretty cleanly when we had Jimmy Butler. Now we go into game 3. He's going to be 100%. We get the home crowd behind us. Like, and I guess what further adjustments are they trying to make to further capitalize on what worked in the first 2 games?
Yeah, I can say from a coaching perspective, you're never happy or satisfied with like especially going in 1-1. Like, the Heat would want to be like, no, we should be up to 2-0. Like even with or without Jimmy, like they probably have some anger and are upset that they didn't win that game. Frankly, not saying that they deserved to win the game, but like it was there, right? Like they had he had a chance,
Like the ingredients, like the shooting they got from when Gabe Vincent looked like Steph Curry for 20 minutes. You're like, all right, let's do this. Let's go win the game. Yeah,
you're on the road without your best player, and you have that performance. You definitely are encouraged. But I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for anybody, just like as someone who just is observing, that the Knicks couldn't rattle off 3 more in a row. Like it's not. That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I probably would be like, man, that's weird for the Heat, but like the Heat were never really this level, like nobody expected them to be as good as they are currently. And so, from a Miami perspective, you're looking at it as, okay, cool. We got game 1. We're hopefully getting Jimmy healthy. I don't know if he will. I mean, ankle injuries suck, and that looked rough. So like there could be some more extensive damage that we don't know about. And I mean, I assume he's coming back to play because he's Jimmy Butler, and they're all tough out in Miami. So I think the encouraging thing, you take the positives and you try to basically say, okay, here's what the Knicks are going to try and do. I imagine it's going to be figuring out the blend of zone versus man, right? If Jimmy's playing, then it's going to probably be like 50-50. It won't be 60 to 65 zone possessions again. I don't think, because the Knicks did figure out some things later in the game where they're basically, flipping the ball screen action around and getting ways for it to get Randall, some touches and to figure out some things that worked against it. But at the end of the day, the zone worked, and it will probably continue to work because of what the way they're doing it and the way the Knicks offense is designed, right? Where you feed off of a high ball screen from Brunson, kind of let him go from there. So I would think that the staff is just considering like the positives that they can take away, but mainly the things that I think they would hit on would be how to create more for Bam on the roll, right? Like how to get him more, because what happens is that the pressure that the handoffs are creating with pulling like Hartenstein out of the paint, or like, Mitchell Robinson at times, who I thought did a good job contesting some of those threes, being able to maybe have them take an extra dribble or 2 and string it out, and finding Bam on the roll, letting him play 4-on-3 or getting downhill. Cause a lot of his scoring opportunities aren't like easy. I haven't seen Bam get he got the lob dunk last game and got like a keeper or 2, I think, for easy layups. But like out of those are still more like him having to do it himself. Like he's had to do a lot of self creation against like Hartenstein 1-on-1, which frankly hasn't looked great. Like Hartenstein and Mitch Robinson did a good job containing him, corralling him. So finding ways to maybe get him more open on the roll or open in space would be a good one for the Heat. And then basically the way that the Knicks defend, I would expect the Heat to have more when they drive baseline, to have more off-ball action on a cut. So the way the Knicks defense is set up when they run like a spread ball screen, the two, and you can watch the video and link the video if you want. It's easier to see on video than it is me explaining it here. But the two players opposite tend to suck in a little bit more on the roll man. So they tend to have almost a foot in the paint or a foot on the paint when the player rolls. So when the pass from the baseline to the corner, it's usually playing 2-on-1 on the weak side to look to get an open shot. And the Heat got some pretty good looks off of that action. But the one thing that was open that I didn't see a ton of is when that player drives baseline, the player on the opposite wing can cut into space and have a little floater or a layup, because the Knicks are rotating so quickly out of that. It might catch them off guard. And the Heat are a pretty good off-ball cutting team, so that wouldn't be hard for them to add, but more just like a player like Highsmith, right? Haywood Highsmith, who isn't necessarily a three-point threat. Him cutting into that space may open up more opportunities for the Heat than it would him spacing and trying to catch and shoot threes. So just things like that, where they're not like major, adjustments. They're anything crazy. I thought they did a couple of ball screens for Bam that opened up. Like Strus got a pick and pop three that he missed when he set a ball screen for Bam. Lowry set one for Bam that they went the other direction and got a handoff three off of. So things like that, where you're having Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson in different scenarios where they're having to be the ball screen handler defender, right? They have to navigate a screen, go under or over, depending on how they handle it. Just in the flow is hard to do. So I think adding a couple more of those. But ultimately, you want to get Jimmy Butler back. And if you get Butler back, you kind of stick with the same game plan of game one, right?
Yeah.
He's the guy. You screen for him, mix in some zone with the bench units, especially. I think you'll see pretty much every second and fourth quarter, you'll see a zone to start an after timeout situation. And hopefully, the Knicks are a little more prepared with a little more sets. They ran their normal man sets against the zone. So I expect maybe with like the 2 or 3 days off here, them to kind of come up with maybe 1 or 2 clever after timeouts, maybe a lob play for Obi or something. That may open up against the zone, but I think that's more of what we'd see overall.
Yeah, I think it's a great point about like putting Mitch and Hartenstein in the action, because we saw points where there's one where Mitch was in drop on Duncan Robinson. I was like, and it ended up going in and out, but I was like, oh, you can't do that. But then even if Mitch comes up in those situations, to your point, then like you get it to Bam and he's playing 4-on-3. And if you're the Knicks, you're relying on Julius Randle to like rotate. And that can get you into a lot of trouble, because if you watch the first quarter of this game, even in the fourth quarter, like right after he stepped over the baseline, like he was inexplicably the one tasked with guarding Duncan Robinson instead of just guarding the inbound and having Josh Hart on him. And Duncan got that wide open three that cut it to 3. And every Knicks fan in America was throwing up somewhere and being like, oh no, not this, not again. But then in the first quarter, it was arguably worse. And it wasn't Miami really doing anything super complicated. It was just like simple, typical stuff. And Julius maybe just a little rusty after not playing for a few days, like a little out of it. But this is just what Randle does defensively. Sometimes like he spaces out and guys get wide open threes. And the Knicks, they were lucky. This wasn't Randle, but like in the first game, the Heat missed a bunch of open threes early. The Heat made a lot of threes in this game, but also missed some ones that could go in at home. And I would, if I were Miami, I would just keep trying to take advantage of him. And it has nothing to do with ability. Like I think Randall's great in a switch situation. We talked about it last time you were on, but off ball, like he just has a tendency to fall asleep. But Gibson, we can end on this. I'm like, what's your prediction for the rest of the series? How do you think it ends up?
Oh man, it's because there's unknown with Butler's injury, so it's like you kind of look at it 2 ways. So like I think if Butler plays, I still think it's probably Knicks in 6, maybe 7.
Okay.
It makes me very uncomfortable watching the Knicks defense kind of struggle with the motion stuff the Heat run, like not necessarily like game 1 where it was more designed around, Butler and his offense at times, but like their core with Bam at the 5 and having the shooters, hand off and screen away and stuff like that. It just wasn't, it's like when you watch teams guard the Warriors and like, there's just a lack of focus. There's just like, not like Julius Randle should not be falling asleep in the playoffs. Like this is not the time, to do. If it's a Tuesday night in March, fair enough. Like I get it. There's 82 games. It's a long season, but like it's do or die time now. Like every possession matters. And so like not having that focus is sort of like, I don't like that, but I think if Butler doesn't play, I think it's probably 5 or 6. I think for the Knicks, if he plays, I think the Heat can steal 1 more or 2 more and maybe push it to 7. But I think the Knicks have not played their best game yet. And I think that's encouraging, right? I think that's the positive from this.
All right, that is a happy note to end on. So we'll call it there. Gibson, thank you so much for joining me. Before I let you go, can you tell everyone one final time where they can find all your great work breaking down the NBA and college basketball?
Yeah, the primary way is Half Court Hoops on Twitter, where I tweet a lot during games and post all the links, all breakdowns I do, and then I have the link tree for everything else you need to find. So Half Court Hoops on YouTube, Half Court Hoops Substack, and then I create basketball playbooks and a lot of resources for coaches and fans who want to learn more, all under the link tree under Half Court Hoops. That's like the easiest way to find everything.
Yeah, if this podcast didn't make it clear enough, you will get smarter about basketball following Gibson. Simply put, Gibson, thank you so much, man. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back with a Game 6 recap and also Alex Wolf joining the guys over at Locked On Heats for some final thoughts before Game 3. That next time on Locked On Knicks.